That is my theme song. So here we are in my house. I haven't made a video for a while. Of course, I have my coffee. So this is just kind of a let's just chat video. Of course, it's a one-way conversation because I'm the only one here, besides my dog. So I wanted to just talk about a couple things. More videos on the way. Some Bonamy stuff, of course, because it's been a while since I put up some Bonamy stuff. But I'm also working on my new record album. Yes, I do write and record my own stuff. I know I've said this a couple times, but I have to say it again. These videos are brought to you by Terry Keating's Greatest Hits. Or technically, Terry Keating Greatest Hits. Okay? Here's the inside. Here's a dedication to my wife and daughter. The 9 songs. The credits. If you can, somebody's always like, oh, Terry, how can we repay you for your stuff? Which is the kindest, coolest thing I've ever heard, honestly. I feel like Charlie Brown on the Charlie Brown thing when the mean kids say to him, you come around here thinking you're better than us, and Charlie Brown's like, better than you. So I sort of feel like people really do appreciate the videos, which really makes me feel good. So if you really want to buy this disc on eBay, I will mail it to you. Okay? You'll see it on there. And I'll sign it. I'll sniff it. I'll rub it. I love it, okay? And I'll get this off to you. It's $7. I'll ship it to you. There's a couple extra bucks if I ship it overseas, which I do. And again, for the 900th time in my videos, the number 3 song, In My Heart, was on Chicago radio, WXRT, which made me feel terrific. Anyway, so let's move on, okay? So here we are. End of summer, kids back at school, which is terrific. More videos now on the way. Fighting allergies, late summer allergies. I'm not really sure what that is. I have a feeling it has to do with oak trees spitting out acorns, which are quite numerous in these parts. But also, too, check this out. So we're having a conversation. I'll let you respond. Okay, my turn to talk. So what I'm getting now, I'm going to get a beta blocker. Okay? I had heard of beta blockers. But I'm going to try these babies sometimes. Of course, I won't drink caffeine for a couple days, which will result in horrible headaches, as we all know. Migraine mimickers. But for, I have a tremor, which a lot of people have. It used to be called a congenital familial tremor or benign essential tremor. Essential, of course, doesn't mean essential in the typical way, I'm sure, because it certainly isn't essential to me. But I'm going to try the beta blocker. I was reading up on it. I always thought they were not dangerous, but like once you took them, it's a long story. I just didn't think they were kind of like, sure, try a beta blocker. It ain't going to hurt you. So I'm going to give those babies a whirl. I'm going to see how my buzz roll goes. Okay, it's not going to I don't think it'll make me a better drummer, but it would be really nice to, before I play a buzz roll, to kind of, like what happens is with my hand, really, check this out. What happens with our, we do buzz rolls depending on how you do them. There are guys or gals that will do them sometimes like this. It is pretty neat how they do it. They call it like the chicken wing or something. And when you hear those buzz rolls in they're unbelievably smooth. If you could ever learn that buzz roll technique, chicken wing buzz roll or whatever, a lot of symphonic percussionists do that. Like I was watching something a few years ago, and I heard this long, it was fluttering, and then it went down to a nice buzz. And I see this German percussionist doing that. I was like, holy shite. But what I do is I sort of, do what they used to call it, the whipped cream roll, which simply means, what it does, it'll spend more time on the surface of the drum. Look that up, whipped cream roll. I think I used to call it the jelly roll. The Jelly Roll Morton buzz roll. That Baby Dodds would be playing behind Jelly Roll. But yeah, the whipped cream roll. But what happens is, check this out. So my right hand, it's kind of smooth, smoothish, right? Watch my left hand. It does, like my right hand seems to kind of there's not really any of these inflection points that sort of jut. There's a few, and I want to sort of have that. But when I really do my left hand, I'm really trying. It's oftentimes, if I work on it long enough, I'll sort of get a nice smooth, but it's like a square. So I'm hoping beta blockers will help. Okay, maybe at some point they'll have surgery where they can cut my head open and take a little teeny bit of my amalgata or whatever, amygdala. So I thought we'd just chat a little. I've been thinking about The Who lately. I love The Who, and tons of people do love The Who. And I wanted to say, I'll make a couple observations on Keith Moon's drumming. I will play a little bit, I guess, but Keith Moon, here's the thing. This is something I touch on in my videos. That there's a difference between people who are very musical, musicians, pure musicians, we'll say. Not the working definition of people who want, but we'll call it a pure musician versus a musician in the sense that's just really good at the instrument, okay? There's two separate globules, okay? They truly are. What happens is you know, you'll get overlaps, like a Venn diagram-y kind of thing. You know, sometimes you get a great pure musician who's also a great playing musician, you know. But then you get people who, you know, there's some overlap, like, you know, in the days you read up on the Beatles. They didn't think they were that great of musicians. They were really tight by the time they went in to record the first record because they played all the time, as a lot of those bands did. In Hamburg, hello, Luke, this is your father. But it's true. Anyway, so back to Keith Moon and The Who. Keith Moon, as we know and love, you know, there's sometimes, even myself, I'll kind of slip into a thing. I'm like, yeah, well, Keith Moon. And I do, and I forget. I forget the genius that was Moon, and of course the genius that is Townsend and The Who. Remember, in a great band or a great anything, a great sports team or a great business or a great marriage, the individual components, 1 + 1 + 1, well, in The Who, 1 + 1 + 1. 4. You will get a synergy. You get a quadrillion. You get a googolplex. You get this like, okay, it's like a fission, okay, or a fusion. Probably a fusion because you take the 4 and anyway. So with The Who, okay, and now here's the thing. I must confess that for a while, I really did. I kind of thought for a long time, like, you know, there's no way Keith frickin' Moon played the drums on the studio recording of My Generation. I'm like, that swings all the way through. There's no doubt the fills are so Keith Moon. He patented Keith Moon. But that's swinging the whole time. I'm like, just not a chance. I really did. I thought they might have brought a session musician in, maybe Moon, you know, that heard Moon play and maybe tried to emulate some of his stuff. And I thought, wow, did a damn good job doing it. Perhaps Mitch Mitchell, who The Who did audition for the drums in The Who after Doug Sandham, I think, left. Okay, or was fired. But I found a clip, and I found another clip years ago where Keith Moon is playing My Generation. He's swinging it, and I'm like, well, I guess it could have been him. But I found a clip, and that's what's so great about YouTube. YouTube is such a resource. If you want to make soup, you can find a recipe. If you want to fix your washing machine, you can find a way to do that. If you want to get all ASMR-y, you can pop a video on and get all like totally funky. If you want to find an old TV recording or an old commercial you haven't seen, you guys know all this. But I found that they're playing at, it's a clip and it says The Who reeling in the years, or reeling in the years, okay? And they're playing, it's 1965, and I do believe it's May, maybe, of 65. Keith Moon is, he's 17 then, if that's the case, because he was born in August of 47. Yeah, because for the 1967... 1967, when he smashed his tooth in for his 21st birthday so he could drink in the United States, it was actually his 20th birthday. They said he was born in 46. Even now on the web, sometimes in books, you'll even see that he was born in 46, but he was born in 47. So, at this show, God, I hope my math is right. Yeah, he's 17, and they're playing My Generation. And I'll be damned to heck if he's not playing exactly like it is on the record. You know, and he's doing you know, he's doing this, and he's getting off the stool and stuff. It's majestic. Now, he might not have been the best technical person, right? But he had some mojo. And that's the thing kind of that we'll talk about, is you have people who, we'll talk specifically about drums, that come up playing kind of their own way. Sure, they have heroes, and they do, you know, everybody does that. jazz musicians with horn players will be like, oh my God, or you get heroes and you want to copy their stuff. It's only natural. But then you go off, hopefully on your own way, and you kind of just become your own guy, right, or your own gal. But Keith Moon was very much as Bonham was in his own, in his way. But they just played a certain way that is extremely hard to emulate. I mean, like specifically, right? I mean, you might really get somebody who might be able to emulate Picasso perfectly, but odds are he or she had to spend a long time doing it. It would almost be like a gimmick, right? You just paint the pictures and say you want to substitute Picasso, give me $1,000 versus the $74 million you might pay for the original. But with Keith Moon and the Who, the Who, Pete Townshend almost had like an orchestral, he had a very British way of writing. Like, I mean, when he ended up doing like Tommy and Quadrophenia, I mean, it was really very specifically and overtly in that vein, right? But when you listen to like Happy Jack, like dum 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 Happy Jack, which by the way I think is one of the richest, low-endy, haunting sounding recordings there is. Well, let's just say recordings. If you get a chance, really listen to it. Like how rich the bass sounds. Like I remember Paul McCartney always used to talk about how they really couldn't get a fat bass sound in England. They really liked the bass sound that came out of the United States. But when I listen to the bass sound on Happy Jack with Entwistle playing a pick, it's got to be a pick, unless he had it's got to be a pick. Listen to how fat that is. Bring it up real fast in another window. I mean, it's beautiful, okay? And the early stuff, or Moon, if you really watch him, it is really a shame that how, with his drug use and boozing a lot, given the times and stuff, and everybody's free to do what the hell they want. I'm not slamming anybody that drinks or does drugs in a certain, I mean, it's your choice. Plus, there are some people, honestly, as as I know, who really can drink regularly and sometimes quite a lot, and they're not alcoholics. It's just part of them. It's just the way they are. If alcohol ceased to exist for a day or two, they might be like, well, shite, that sucks, and they'd be okay. And sometimes with I won't say cocaine, the hard stuff, cocaine, heroin, I mean, maybe there's some people, but don't do those. In fact, honest to God, when I'm always sniffling and all hyperactive, I do not do cocaine. I really do not. I do not do amphetamines. I don't even drink anymore. This is coffee that has caffeine, and I'm also just a hyperactive ADD guy. Honest to God. Now, I don't mind if people want to make the comments for fun, that's fine. But really, if little kids watch it, I don't want them to think I'm over here like, you know what I'm saying? Because it's really not true. Okay, so anyway, but Moon really, as he sort of degenerated in his, and naturally with the, he still had moments of brilliance. Don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people poop all over his performance on Who Are You, which was recorded in '77. By the way, a lot of that music on there is hard for me to listen to. It's so British. It's like so, I don't know. God love Pete Townshend, though. Pretty much one of my top 3 favorite musicians as a writer, player. But even Who Are You, if you listen to that, I mean, there's some cool stuff on there. I mean, they might have had to do a trillion takes, as a lot of bands did. They didn't have quantizing back then, or, computers to flip everything around, which is another whole can of worms, which I might even talk about here, as we all know, to make a nice synergist, orgasmic recording. We'll get onto that, as I've said in other videos. But his playing on Who Are You is brilliant. I mean, I think it really is. Even like 905, which is a John Entwistle song, which is just Keith Moon kind of, and you can hear him, he's not 100% solid on it, but that gives it like a mojo. It's like when you see a band live, right? And everybody's clapping in the band, or the tambourine player and the drummer, and they're not hitting at the same time. Even if you listen to like Time Is On My Side by the Stones. Time. Listen to how off the tambourine and the snare are for long chunks of time, right? But it still sounds like a song. It doesn't sound like anybody's dropping the ball, right? So, but back to Moon, God love him, the last record he did, and it is really neat. If you've not really checked the Who out, if you're a passive Who fan, watch The Kids Are Alright. Documentary, 1979. A fellow named Jeff Stein was a huge Who fan, said, do you mind if I make a documentary about you? Got a chance to go in and for a few months film with the Who. And there's some really cool stuff on there. There's the Who playing at their Shepperton soundstage, rehearsing. I think it's at Shepperton, or maybe it's at Emerson, Lake and Palmer's rehearsal joint. Anyway, but they're playing like Barbara Ann and stuff. It is so cool. And Keith Moon's singing it, But it also shows them playing at Shepperton Studio, who kind of owned, or at least a lot of the buildings on the old Shepperton Studio. So what they did was on May 25th, 1978, which I know this, I remember, because I really loved watching that concert, like footage of that concert when I was a kid. I just thought it was so cool having Baba O'Reilly kick in. Like they were sitting on this Russell Hardy show, and they're sitting there and they're messing around. You know, Keith Moon, is it Townsend knocks as he walks away, he knocks over a big stack of amps, which are like, and Russell Hardy, I think. It's like, is that our equipment or yours? And, you have Moon sitting there like, don't mind the upholstery, lad. It's hysterical if you get a chance to watch this exchange. And then it busts right into Baba O'Reilly. It's like, you've been together for a decade, haven't you? And somebody's like, yeah, the decade of the Who. And Pete Townsend's like, who decade? And it cuts right into Baba O'Reilly. It is, I think that is the coolest thing in the world. So anyway, Keith Moon playing there, you can really see how tired he is, how he's just not really cutting it. Although he really is playing very well, relatively speaking, along to the sequencer. Remember, in those days, it was done out of necessity. When Townsend did like maybe some of Tommy, but definitely Who's Next and into Quadrophenia, and then further on, he had like this, I don't know how you say it, ARP. I've always seen it, ARP or ARP synthesizer. That he would. I'm not really sure. I guess they were early sequencers, kind of like the what was it, like a Fairchild. Were people, not a Fairchild, what the hell was that? A Fairlight or something? There was some kind of thing, like this first sequencers that were like $400,000. But Townsend utilized one of those, and it would kind of be on a grid. I don't know if he went with the metronome and just striped the whole thing, or if, in fact, some of that stuff would just be on a grid, right? Like, I think Bob O'Reilly, if you listen, he's essentially just going, because the notes are going, da-da-da-da-da, right? Da-da-da-da-da-da, and I think those were what they called monophonic, meaning you could only hit one key at a time. You couldn't do chords on those early ones. Now, the interesting thing is, I won't get fooled again. What you actually hear, though, isn't the synthesizer. I think they're feeding it through it, maybe, but it's an organ. That is Pete Townsend. He did that in his house. He had a studio at his house, which originally started when, I think, Kit Lambert, who was sort of like the Who's Brian Epstein, said, listen, I know you're the creative genius, here's a bunch of equipment, do your thing. You record, make demos. And he'd make these demos. Townsend used to make the whole song in his studio, wherever it was, in his house or wherever, where he played the drums and everything. Like, the songs sometimes were just done. And they'd go into the studio, Daltrey would put his vocal on top, Keith would put his drums on it, and that whistle his bass. Even in the very early days, I was shocked to hear, I heard a really early Who song that I heard the demo of, and I thought, wow, Pete Townsend was making his demos even then. But anyway, so Moon played along to that stuff pretty well, right? There is an interesting clip where they do Who Are You for the benefit of the film crew, for the film, the documentary, where Keith Moon, they do set up Keith Moon's drums, and Moon is really playing and recording his drums, and Entwistle really is doing his guitar, his bass, and Townsend's really doing his guitar, and who would I leave out? And then he does, Townsend does a little piano, and it's the same like sequencer that they're playing along to, right? That's what it is, and it's really neat watching Moon play. Even though his technique, he's better playing there than he is at the May 25th thing, because it's probably a few months apart. It still might even be 77 when he's playing. So he has the red shirt. It says Keith, and his headphones are duct taped to his head. It's really, really neat. And what else is really interesting for the diehard people? Diehard drummers like ourselves. I only have a bunch of Peisties sitting here for now, although I have tons of Zildjians, but I don't know, well, a few. All right, so here, what happened is, it's really neat in that the Zildjians Moon had at that time, he'd kind of go back and forth between Peisty and Zildjian. Where see how the Peisty logo, well, Zildjian, it would be like that too, right? Like Zildjian, it would just say Zildjian. But the symbols he had, it said Zildjian this way, which I always thought, even years ago, I thought was so cool. I'm like, wow, that Zildjian logo looks funny. And people have made, everyone has seen it. People have seen it. Drummers first thing, like, wow, look at that Zildjian logo. It's like upside down on the disc, right? But it's really neat watching them. I'm gonna have to blow my schnoz in a minute because I think it's oak. It's also an oral allergy, so sometimes when I eat certain like walnuts and stuff, I get all funky. Here's an old snot rag. So, but But anyway, so the documentary, terrific. If you get a chance, it's awesome. It does show Moon in his kind of waning years of playing. But there's also another documentary called, and I'm going to have to switch this tape out, or this, because I think I'm going to run out of juicy juice. I'll try to be fast. Let me just kind of move it faster. I'll talk a lot faster. So anyway, so there's another thing too, where 25 years maximum R&B, The Who, came out in 1979-ish, 89-ish. It's a documentary and a bunch of music, where it's sort of, they say it's sort of a continuation of The Kids Are Alright. And there's a ton of stuff on there which is so nice, which, by the way, there's some footage on there and music of The Who in 79, with Kenny Jones on the drums. Now, the show, I think, is from December 9th. I think December 9th, 1979. And so it's Kenny Jones on the drums, which I think got sort of unnecessarily a hard time. He came and he did his best to copy Moon in a certain way, but also keep it solid. Townsend wanted it more solid, but I think he also wanted to play the toms up a little hard. Of course, hard chair to fill. But if you listen to the sound of that show, International Amphitheater, they recorded and they actually videotaped, probably filmed too, this show, Chicago Amphitheater, International Amphitheater. And the sound of it is so rich. If you listen to it, Townsend's playing a Telecaster, and if you listen to this show, it almost has the same kind of haunting sound of, it's like Happy Jack from the 60s. It's just a really rich sound. There's one of the best renditions of Pinball Wizard on there you'll ever hear, where Townsend comes in with a guitar, a long sort of guitar piece into the song, which is a beautiful thing. Check it out. Type in The Who International Amphitheater. Put it in another window. Just check that out if you get a chance. You might be able to find the whole show on there, but in the 30 years maximum R&B, they just have Music Must Change, Pinball Wizard, 515, and a couple other things. Not Dreaming from the Way, some stuff like that. And there's a bunch of good banter between, Townsend talking about like his relationship with Daltrey, which is pretty awesome. And there is a point, and they're in that Pinball Wizard when they're playing, where Townsend makes Daltrey laugh in the middle of one of the verses. I mean, right? It's awesome. It's just really neat to see that kind of thing. So, anyway, so that's my chat for today. This is a nice set of drums that I got, which I will show you. Check this out. This is a birch set. It's an APK. Ouch. These are being sold on eBay by Percussion King LLC or whatever. Now they're giving these things away. I got to tell you, I had to buy them. I think you can buy this thing right now on eBay for $324. Well, it's an auction. But the neat thing is it's a 20 by 14 bass drum. I relished, I used to, the fact now you can start, the trend is going back to shallower drums. At least, you could always kind of get them on the high expensive stuff. But even on the lower, cheaper stuff, they're going back to thinner drums. The Ludwig Elements, they have the Pop Kit, which is a 20 by 15. Yamaha a few years ago started with certain bigger bass drums, 24 by 15. Other companies, the shallower bass drums kind of coming back, which I think is terrific. So thanks for watching my videos. There's going to be more on the way. Now these are going to sound like Biggest because of the heads. I didn't change them. So I would recommend, if somebody, let that mic decompress, if somebody wants to get a really nice set of drums which has a cool pearl finish, and you could probably get it for under $400, I'd recommend these. Go on, Percussion. I'm not affiliated with Percussion King LLC. But anyway, so more videos on the way. I'm recording my new stuff. What else did I want to say, though? It's kind of important. Anyway, more videos on the way. School's back in session, so I can do more stuff now. So I really appreciate my subscriber rate seems to be going up really fast now, which is nice. And I also want to say, don't forget about my disc. If you can buy this baby on eBay, I'll personally write on it if you like, and I'll mail it to you. Remember, a song was on the radio, but I also need to, I have a bunch of these. I have like 500 of these. It'd be nice just to, prove to my wife I can sell 500 and maybe get some money in the house, So thank you so much. Again, Jimmy Page. If it ever gets back to you by somebody's friend, somebody's uncle, if you could make remember the Beatles, the Complete Beatles, these are like the notes. Somebody went back and found all the tapes and, what they did and what days they recorded. If you could make one of these for Zeppelin, you'd be the extra golden god you are. It's great you did the companion discs, which is another whole series of videos, which I'll put my observations on the companion discs, which might not really mean anything to anybody, but it's my video, so I'm going to make it. If you have a problem with it, you can lick my balls. Okay? So, thanks for watching my videos. More videos on the way. And I really appreciate the subscribing and the nice comments, and people really seem to like the videos. I really, really appreciate that. So thank you very much. Keep watching.